Wish I could say something that was classy and inspirational, but that just wouldn't be our style.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to Steelers Sanctuary Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Ribeiro from SteelersSanctuary.com. And today we've got our go-to draft guy, Tony Pauline. Tony, what's going on?
Oh, a lot. I mean, a lot of draft stuff, a lot of
Busy time of year.
well, actually, now February is not bad at all. There's kind of a little lull between Shrine and Senior Bowl practices and the Combine. So I got to see the Zeppelin movie. I was at the Westminster Dog Show last night. But
really? Nice.
Once the Combine rolls around, and I believe I leave on the 25th. From then through the month of March, which is Pro Day, it's going to be crazy. And I'm going to see John Lodge at the Moody Blues next week. So,
nice. You're doing all right over there, huh?
We're getting all now because once the Combine starts, when I'm at the Combine, right? It's busy. And when Pro Day starts, I literally barely leave the seat that I'm sitting in right now.
I'm dying to see the Led Zeppelin. We were talking about it just before we got on. I got to see it this weekend. I'm a huge fan as well. So, before we talk this year's draft, I wanted to go back to last year's draft. The Steelers drafted Troy Fautanu, as you know, number 1 overall, 21st overall, their number 1 pick.
Right.
A lot of questions about red flags about his injury history, maybe, and of course, as we know, he missed the entire season with a knee injury. Do you have anything? Do you remember the reports on Fautanu and some of the things?
No, I absolutely do. You can go back to my final mock draft when people were talking about the Jets taking him with, I think the Jets had the 10th pick. They ended up with the 11th pick after they traded down. And people were talking about the Jets taking Fautanu with that pick. And I said, there's no way they were taking him because of red flags medically on his knee. I also did a podcast with the Seahawks right beforehand. I said, the Seahawks won't take him because of medical red flags. And everybody's like, well, I haven't heard anything. But yeah, I knew there were some serious concerns about his knee coming out of Washington. And it was all, he's a great guy. He's a great player. But the knee issues from the past concern us, which is why he fell the way he did. And as the Steelers saw, why he was on the sidelines for 99% of his rookie season.
Yeah, he didn't even make it to the first preseason game before they shelved him for the season. That's concerning.
Yeah,
we had heard it a little bit.
I would agree. I mean, it was reported. You know, what happens is with injuries and things like that, it is concerning, but there comes the point where, as a team, where does the reward outweigh the risk? You know, here's a guy who had a sensational final year at Washington, did well in the pre-draft process, and, you know, he had these past issues which came up in MRIs and things like that. And you have to roll the dice and gamble as to, well, listen, we're going to take him. We think he will be able to play on this. And the reward of taking him in the bottom third of round 1 is going to outweigh the risk of, you know, what we're seeing on the MRIs or what our doctors, you know, are basically telling us on these MRIs. You also have to remember, you know, it's not all the same. Medical information is not the same from team to team. So while I was saying that the New York Jets wouldn't take him because of the medical concerns and the Seattle Seahawks weren't taking him because of medical concerns, that doesn't mean that the Steeler doctors didn't look at those MRIs and, if not give him a clean bill of health, say this won't be a problem. And, you know, it's been 1 year. Let's see what happens moving forward.
Yeah, to be fair, Omar Khan did come out and say his doctor, the Steelers doctors cleared him and they were comfortable taking him. And you're right. Once you get into the 20s, then the risk reward starts getting a little better than as opposed to a team in the top 10 like the Jets were and other teams. All right, let's fast forward to this year. Quarterback's a big issue with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They won't be in the market for the Wards or the Shedeur Sanders of the world, but what's your opinion on Jackson Dart? He's kind of a controversial quarterback. Some people love him. Some people don't like him as much. How do you feel on the Jackson Dart?
I don't like him for the Steelers system. I mean, I think he's a good San Francisco 49er type of quarterback, a timing type of, you know, intermediate passer. If you want to throw the ball down the field, you're not taking Jackson Dart. And that's one thing I wanted to see at the Senior Bowl. I always liked Jackson Dart. I had him rated higher than most coming into the season. But I knew all along, I mean, the big question about that Jackson Dart is the ability to get the ball downfield with speed, and he really cannot do that. If you watch his deep passes, whether it be at Senior Bowl practice, whether it be during on film, a lot of times the receivers are slowing up and waiting for the ball to arrive, and he didn't have speedsters there. He didn't have,
No.
Xavier Worthy types there at Mississippi. So I think he could be a good quarterback in a specific timing West Coast type of offense. If you want to throw the ball downfield, if you want to get vertical, he's not your guy.
Any other quarterbacks you like in the later rounds? The Cal McCords, Will Howards, anybody like that you?
Well, I mean, both of those guys are good, and both of those, physically, they're very good. Both of those guys have improved their draft stock, but both of those guys are the opposite of Jackson Dart. Yeah, they have big, downfield arms. They can throw the ball vertically with speed, but unlike Jackson Dart, they don't read the field as well. Excuse me. McCord and Howard both tend to stare down the primary target. I mean, those are major concerns. I would rather have a guy with a weaker arm who sees the field better and basically doesn't make bad throws, as opposed to a guy that's going to try and force the ball in the covered targets, which McCord and Howard have done throughout their career. They did less of it in 2024 than they had previously, which is a good sign, but they still do it. I mean, I think when the Steelers are selecting, and I had the Steelers taking this guy early on, kind of fell off of it after the Senior Bowl. I mean, I always liked Jalen Milroe. Okay. When you talk about from a physical standpoint, he is the supreme quarterback in this year's class. When you talk about arm strength, the ability to make plays with his legs, just the physical attributes. He is a tremendous leader. He's a high character guy. The problem with Jalen Milroe is really from that Georgia game on, and he was magnificent in that Georgia game.
Yes, he
his
was.
Passing went downhill. I mean, he was winning games at the end of the year with his legs, his feet, not his arm. Did not look good at the Senior Bowl. He seems to have lost confidence in his passing. So the bottom line with Jalen Milroe is he's got tremendous upside, but you better have a great quarterback coach to basically coach him up and get his confidence back.
Where do you see him land in second round? Does he?
I mean, I did a mock first round, which came out literally the day after the Senior Bowl. I did not have him going in the first round. I absolutely think he could go late part of round one. Okay. Quarterbacks are always overdrafted. I mean, who thought 6 quarterbacks were going to go in the first 12 picks or whatever it was last year? So I do think that in the end, and as we get closer to the draft, there's a chance that both Jalen Milroe and Quinn Ewers will get first round. It could end up in the first round.
Oh, wow. You think Quinn Ewers too, huh? Even with his...
Again, you're talking about a guy that's got a downfield arm, a guy that challenges the vertical game. I mean, if the Raiders don't get a quarterback with that 7th pick, if they can't move up, I could see them moving back into the back end of round one to get a guy like Quinn Ewers because he would fit their system.
That makes sense. All right, let's flip over to running back. Steelers only have one running back on the roster as we speak right now. Obviously, Ashton Jeanty is going to be gone early in the first round or mid-first round. What are some late first, early second round guys that you think you might like in this draft?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a good year to need a running back because there are great running backs at the top, and, it goes very deep. After Ashton Jeanty, I like Caleb Johnson of Iowa. I like his speed. I like his explosion. I like his ability to create yardage, his ability to run on the outside. I like Omarion Hampton of North Carolina, who I think would be an excellent fit for the Steelers offense, a bigger, grinded out type of pounder who also has exceptional speed for a big back. Quinshon Judkins of Ohio State, who showed flashes throughout the season, but in that college football playoffs, she really showed what he is capable of. He's a violent runner who really, just runs north-south and, sets up a defender and just will try and run around him or run through him. And he does it, with a lot of success. Another good fit for the Steelers offense. Damian Martinez in the 3rd round from University of Miami, the Oregon State transfer. I think that would be another great fit. And I think that guy is one of the most underrated backs in this draft. You look at his 2024 film, he was rotational back at Miami because they had a lot of players at the position. You go back and watch 2023 when he was at Oregon State. I mean, he couldn't be stopped. And he's a bigger back, 230 pounds, 240 pounds. He doesn't just run through defenders. I mean, he can run around them. He's got good footwork. He's got the ability to create. And he's also a solid receiver out of the backfield.
I just got done watching Omarion Hampton. I love him. I think you're spot on with his fit with the Steelers. Does he last to, I think they're 46 in the second round? Or a lot of people have him the second back off the board.
Yeah, I have him. I have him just slightly below Caleb Johnson because I like Caleb Johnson's speed better. Okay. Does he make it to the middle part of round 2? Going to be tight. I don't think he does.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think so either. Okay, let's flip to wide receiver. The Steelers desperately need a wide receiver, and I guess this isn't the greatest draft in the world to need a receiver. Late first round or second round guys like maybe Abuka or someone like that. Who do you think it would be good for the Steelers in that area?
Yeah, unlike past years, this is not a deep receiver draft. Emeka Abuka, 21 is a bit early for my taste. I did have him going in the first round in my mock draft, only because there were no other receivers. He's polished. Yeah. He's very reliable. Yet he's not really big and he's not super fast. So, you're going to get a guy that, can catch 5 passes for 50 yards. He's not going to put up huge numbers, but, he's going to catch the ball. Later on, if you're looking for a big body receiver or a bigger body possession type guy, Aya Maynor of Stanford is the guy who should be there in round 2. A lot of people like him in round 1. I never thought he's a round 1 type of guy. He's not very quick. He's not very fast. Jaden Higgins of Iowa State, late 3rd round, early 4th round type guy. If you're looking for later on in the draft, let's see, bigger guys. Savion Williams is a day 3 guy who I think he produce at the next level. Kendry Lambert-Smith of Auburn by way of Penn State. Taller guy, very sure-handed, not a speedster. Go back to Miami, Sam Brown of Houston transfer. It's going to be a late round pick. Didn't produce the way he was expected, but he's got excellent size, he's got decent speed, and he's shown solid pass-catching skills. So he could be a steal late in day 3 if you're able to get him back to where he was in 2023.
That's an interesting guy. What about Golden from Texas? Yeah. What do you think about him?
I mean, I've got to do more work on him. I still have him and Isaiah Bond neck and neck. A lot of people like him as a first rounder. I think the problem is there were so many targets that Quinn Ewers had at his disposal. Sometimes guys get overrated. Sometimes guys get underrated. I just haven't done enough work on Golden yet to give a full opinion.
I've seen Savion Williams. I've seen a lot about him. I've seen comps to Deebo Samuel. I've seen him early in the second round.
I don't think that's gonna happen.
You don't think that's accurate?
I think I like Savion Williams, but I like him as a day 3 pick.
Okay.
I mean, unless the guy somehow runs under 4.5 at the combine, and he's expected to be a 4.55, 4.57 type guy.
Yeah. So if he runs like a 4.4, that'll push him up the.
I would, draft. Yeah, and the other testing numbers fall into line.
Yeah. All right, let's flip to defensive tackle. We know Cam Hayward's getting a little older, and there's a need there. I saw you had Walter Nolan to the Steelers in your mock draft. You like Walter Nolan a lot?
I do. I think he's better than what he showed at the Senior Bowl. You watch the tape, and he's a playmaker. He's a guy that they double teamed in the middle of the line, yet he was able to penetrate, through the line of scrimmage and make plays. He's athletic. He's big. He's got to get a little bit stronger, but that should come in time. He's still a younger guy, but he's very explosive. I think he's got a high upside. And again, I know he was a bit of a disappointment at the Senior Bowl, but when you watch the film, he was there week in and week out making plays for Mississippi.
We saw glimpses of Mike Tomlin talking to him and next to him and that, so that kind of connects. It looks like Tomlin had some interest in him at the Senior Bowl. I heard Tomlin spent most of his time on the defensive line. Did you happen to notice him over there?
No, I know he spent time with the pass rusher from UCLA. We spoke with him.
Oh, really?
I know he spent a lot of time with him. I was down with the defensive lineman. I work both ends. So when I'm at the defensive lineman, or the offensive lineman, I'm actually watching what's going on between the players, not who's watching them.
Yeah. Okay. Any second, third round defensive tackles you might think fit the Steelers? I've heard some good stuff about Jordan Phillips out of Maryland.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
that's
think
the
he's
guy I
supposed.
was going to mention. I love Jordan Phillips. I mean, I think he's an underrated guy. Doesn't have great stats. You look at the stats, you're like, what the heck? But if you watch the film, constantly double teamed in the middle of the defensive line at Maryland, which allowed his teammates to make plays. He was good 2 years in a row. He's not a one year guy. He was on my radar coming into the 2024 season as a potential day 2 pick. Was kind of stymied the first day of Shrine Bowl practice, and then he couldn't be stopped. They lined him up at inside. They lined him up defensive end. He showed himself to be a good pass rusher, which he really didn't at Maryland. So you're just wondering if it was a schematic sort of thing. I like Jordan Phillips. I think he's going to be a solid day 3 pick. As far as other guys, possibly Ty Robinson out of Nebraska, who I believe could play end in a 3-man front. A very athletic guy, a guy who was constantly making plays at Nebraska, a guy who they could not stop. If you watch the film, just ate up the Ohio State offensive line during that game. Had a tough initial 2 days of Senior Bowl practice. Then on the final day, Thursday, it was the Ty Robinson that I expected to see. Later on, day 3 guys, Yaya Black of Iowa, very athletic guy with an upside, just needs to put together a complete game.
I saw the
The kid,
measurements on Black. He's huge, right? He's got long arms, tall guy.
and he's talented too. He's very talented too. Brinson of Georgia, I think, really played well this year. He's going to get some early day 3 consideration.
Okay, one of the final spots we want to cover today is cornerback. The Steelers have a need
They always
at
do,
corner.
don't they?
They always do, Tony. It's like a revolving door. A name I like is Siobhan Ravel. I mean, I know he's coming off the injury. Does he still get first round buzz, or is he second round guy type?
No, well, unless something really pops up bad on those MRIs, and we talked about that with Fatanu, didn't we?
Yeah.
It's got to be really bad. I think Ravel's going to end up as a late first round pick. It's a shame the injury happened. The injury happened during practice, and as far as I'm concerned, Ravel was playing much better in the beginning of 2024 than he had played in 2023. And if he had continued on that pace, and if he had not gotten injured and continued on that pace, he well could have been the first cornerback selected. He's going to get late first round consideration. It's just a matter of when do you think he's going to be back on the field, and don't rush him back on the field, because that injury happened in the middle of October. I know the injuries, which used to be those types of injuries, which used to be a year recovery, are now more like 6 to 8 months. He's got great upside. He's got excellent size. He's got real good speed. He was showing improved ball skills. Late first round pick. My concern is that a team just rushes him back on the field too early.
Yeah, that's kind of a quick turnaround for him. Any other corners? I know the Florida State kid showed pretty well at the Senior Bowl, correct?
Yeah.
His name's escaping me right now.
Azariah Thomas, and
That's
I know
it,
I
yep.
mispronounced his first name. Yeah, he surprised me at the Senior Bowl. I don't think he's a first rounder. I have him in the second round, but
Yeah.
he's big, he's physical, he's shown solid ball skills. It still needs a little work making plays with his back to the ball, but he's got a lot of upside. I can see him come off the board early in the second round.
Any other late first or mid second round corners that you see that the Steelers could?
I mean, late first, Jahdae Barron of Texas, who played nickel and on the outside of Texas, and basically couldn't be stopped. I'm not a fan of Trey Amos like a lot of other people. I think he's solid. I think he's got some upside, but I think he needs a lot of polish in his game, which is why I have him more in the bottom half of round 1. Your third round, Kobe Bryant of Kansas, who was terrific at the Senior Bowl, but now you're talking third round area.
All right. Tight ends is kind of a low key need for the Steelers. I just wanted to ask you, because I saw your mock, and you had Loveland ahead of Tyler Warren in your mock. You like Loveland better, or was it just that better scheme fit? Because I'm a big Warren fan.
Well, I think Loveland is faster, and he's more of a downfield threat than Warren. I mean, obviously, Warren, you watch the games, and there's a lot to fall in love with. But I think with Loveland, he's more of a natural pass catcher. He's a guy that's going to bring it down the field, or can get down the field easier than Warren. And I think with Loveland, he had a shoulder injury this year. So with Loveland, you had the shoulder injury this year. So you really got to go back and watch 2022, 2023 to get the full version of Colston Loveland. You can't just rely on what happened in 2024 when you had huge turnover on the Michigan offense. You had a brand new quarterback. How many were they played? Like 3 quarterbacks at that last year at Michigan.
Yeah.
It may have been even more. They couldn't get that position right. So with Loveland, you really got to go back and watch the previous film, which is a large part why I have him rated higher than Warren, because he's more of a downfield threat, more of a natural pass catcher.
Okay, good to know. Last position, guard won't be a first round consideration, maybe not even second, but it could be a low key position the Steelers look on day 2. Any guards in that area that you like that we should keep an eye on?
I mean, day 2, where in day 2, Gray Zabel of North Dakota State, the college
He really
tackle,
did well, right? Senior Bowl.
Played well during the season. I mean, people talk about him at the Senior Bowl. Go back and watch the first game of the year against Colorado. He was terrific.
Okay.
You're talking late second, early third. Donovan Jackson of Ohio State, who did not play well in 2023. And was improving in 2024. Then injuries forced him to kick out to left tackle, where he did a decent job, but he's going to be a guard in the NFL. Dylan Fairchild of Georgia. But you'll be able to get, I believe, good guards in day 3. Miles Frazier of LSU, Nash Jones of Texas State, a couple small school guys, Marcus Ware of Montana State, who really did well at the Shrine Bowl. So you can, and I believe the Steelers have come away with good interior offensive linemen in day 3. There is, a good deal of depth at that position.
What did you think of Mason McCormick coming out of last year? He had a pretty good
I love
rookie season for the Steelers.
Yeah, I mean, Mason McCormick is one of those guys where on film in 2022 and 2023 out of South Dakota State, I loved him. I thought he was great. He went to the Shrine Bowl, and he did not dominate at Shrine practice the way I thought he should have, which I thought was going to depress his stock. I was a bit surprised where the Steelers took him. I think they took him in the 4th round, though I was happy that they took him because I knew the type of player that he could be. And, they just coached him up, and they got him back to where he was during the regular season. I mean, you watch the film from 2023 and 2022, 2023, Mason McCormick at South Dakota State. There was a lot to like there.
While we're talking about the Steelers draft from last year, I wanted to ask you this on the open. Is there anything about Roman Wilson that concerns you going into – because he missed the entire season. Yeah. He was healthy towards the end, and they couldn't even get activated from the injured reserve. A lot of people are questioning what went wrong with Roman Wilson in 2024. Was there anything that concerned you?
Well, he had concussion issues from what I remember off the top of my head. I mean, he had some concussion. He had issues with concussions, which can be a tricky thing. I don't know what they said on the injury report because I wasn't following it. I thought it was a good 3rd-round pick. In fact, I remember reporting that the Steelers were targeting him in round 2, and then Zach Frazier became available. They took Zach Frazier. They hit a home run on that, and then they came back and took Roman Wilson in round 3. Now, Wilson had concussion issues his last year at Michigan. I don't know if that was the reason why he barely played or didn't play at all last year. I don't know what the injury report said, but there were some minor medical red flags. The concussion issue can be kind of tricky, though.
Yeah, I think it was a leg injury that kept him out, but it seemed like people have intimated that he had trouble for whatever reason. Mike Tomlin likes to say jumping on the moving train, like he wasn't catching up to the offense fast enough. And it's kind of a source of frustration here in Pittsburgh because the Steelers aren't exactly known to having, the most complex offense in the world. So if he had trouble catching on to that offense, I
didn't hear anything like that. I mean, okay. I can check, but I did not hear anything that, he was basically a dummy, which is what you're implying.
Well, I'm trying to be politically correct about it, but it was a mystery all season because he came out in an interview that said he was healthier than he had ever been in his entire career, and the Steelers never activated him from the injured reserve the entire season. So it was kind of a bizarre situation here. Before I let you go, some overall draft thoughts. How does this quarterback class measure up to quarterback classes in the past, like last year? Is this as bad as people say? Do you like Cam Ward and Shador Sanders?
Well, I don't think it's as bad as people say, but you're coming off a quarterback year where you're
Yeah,
coming off a year where 6 guys were drafted in the first
phenomenal.
12 picks. You had 3 guys at the top. One guy of the 3, the second one selected, looks like
Yeah.
he's going to be a franchise quarterback, and none of these guys, measure up to that. I mean, the problem with a lot of these opinions, in my opinion, it's going to sound arrogant, is a lot of these people, they cover the NFL all year and then they hop on the draft bandwagon when their team is done with the season or when the Super Bowl's over. I think Cam Ward is a lot like Jaden Daniels in the sense that, Jaden Daniels was a great quarterback the year and a half before he was drafted. And Cam Ward was a great quarterback at Miami last year. There's no doubt about it. His game is on the upswing, and I place a lot of importance in that. I place importance that you draft a guy when he's at the top of his game at the college level, as opposed to say someone who's coming off a bad year, a la Caleb Williams. So I like that a lot about Cam Ward. Shador Sanders, I think he's got terrific skills. I think he's got a lot of upside. I think he's someone who came through in the clutch for Colorado. I do think that, his father didn't help the situation at times in Colorado. I think that they had a terrible offensive line, obviously, Colorado, as you can see. I think both Cam Ward and Shador Sanders improvised a little too much. Sometimes they held the ball too long to their detriment. Rather than taking off upfield, they wanted to sit behind the line of scrimmage, sometimes in the pocket, sometimes out of the pocket, scan the field, see if anything was available to them. That's what got them into trouble. Hopefully, they'll be able to coach it out of them. Jalen Milroe already spoke about him. He needs a good coach. If he gets his confidence back, he could be a premier quarterback. Quinn Ewers, he's got great physical skills. He's a little slow pulling the trigger at times, which is a concern to me. People have said he just doesn't want to make mistakes. We'll see if that can be coached out of him. Jackson Dart, we talked about. Riley Leonard, I think, is a great athlete developing into a passer. So again, like Jalen Milroe, if you get the right quarterback coach and you put him in the right system, the right scheme, a franchise that has a history of developing quarterbacks, which means a lot of teams not named the New York Jets or Cleveland Browns.
Or Steelers, for that matter. You can throw them in
Oh,
there, too.
no, the Steelers have had some success. You can't, I mean,
Well, they got Ben Roethlisberger for 20
right,
years. So,
and they had him for a long, long time.
Yeah.
So they just got to find the right guy after Roethlisberger. I mean, I was never a fan of the Kenny Pickett selection. I thought that was kind of crazy. But
I'm a Riley Leonard fan. I'd like to see him later on. That would be a late round option for the Steelers, I think.
Well, he's going to go. He's not going to be there in the late rounds. So he could go. He could go day 3, or I don't think he gets out of it. I'm sorry. He could go third round. I don't think he gets out of the fourth round. I mean, he was a guy who carried that Notre Dame offense into the championship game. I mean, with his arm and with his legs, he's a great leader. He's a tremendous athlete, and he really started to turn the corner from athlete to passer. As the second half of the season turned on, and he didn't have a lot of talent around him. I mean, he didn't have a good offensive line. He had the running back who was injured late in the year, didn't have great receivers there, did a lot of it by himself.
Speaking of Notre Dame, their cornerback that was that was injured. What do you think
Benjamin
about him?
Morrison?
Yeah, how do you feel about him?
I think Benjamin Morrison, like Will Johnson of Michigan, is a guy that, unlike Shannon Revell, probably was a better cornerback in 2023 than he was in 2024. And like Revell, even Will Johnson had his season cut short by injury, which is a shame because you would have liked to see him play out the season and see what you got on him. So you got to make up your mind as far as scouting is concerned. Are you going to go off I believe he played 5 games in 2024. I may need to be corrected on that, where he was not as good as he was in 2023. Or are you going to go back, his first 2 years at Notre Dame where he was a shutdown corner? I mean, I like to give him the benefit of the doubt. I will say, though, that the cornerback position is like the quarterback position in the sense that if a guy enters the draft off a bad year, it's often tough for them to get it back to where they were when they were playing their top football. I mean, Ohio State's a perfect example of that. The Eli Apples, the Bradley Robies of the world. These guys entered the NFL draft off a bad season, and they never met expectations. That's a concern for a guy like Ben Morrison. But again, it's tough to dismiss what Morrison did as a freshman and sophomore where he would just lock down the opponent's top receivers.
And you still have Will Johnson inside the top 10, right? I think I saw your. Did you have him in your top 10 in the mock?
Yeah, I did. I had Will Johnson going to the New York Jets at 7.
Okay.
I think it's as indicative of the fact that the top of this draft is not very strong. It's going to be a deep draft in the late rounds because of the fact that this is the end of the road for a lot of those guys who got that extra year of eligibility due to COVID, and we're 5 years removed from that. So you're going to have a lot of guys who could have been in the 2023 to 2024 draft. Now they have to be in the 2023, 2024 draft, have to be in the 2025 draft. So you're going to have a lot of quantity in the late rounds, 5th, 6th, 7th round, but it's just not a very, very strong year at the top of the draft.
All right, one last question. Who's going to be the best player? I know it's early, but who's going to be the best player out of this draft? Quarterback, linebacker, position notwithstanding. Who do you think is going to be the best player in this draft?
I'm going to shock people. I'm going to say Jalen Walker of Georgia.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think that people are going to brush him as an edge rusher. I disagree with that. I think he's a 3-down player. I wrote about Jalen Walker over the summer. Keep an eye on this guy when he was basically a backup, a substitute during the 2023 season for Georgia. And this guy can just do it all. I mean, he's explosive, he's fast, he's instinctive, he's a powerful and explosive pass rusher, yet at the same time, he gets great depth on his pass drops and covers a lot of area on the field. And, unlike the Abdul Carters, who I like a lot, unlike the Tet McMillans, who I also like a lot, the Travis Hunters, who I do like, but I think he's a bit overrated, Jalen Walker's just starting to hit his stride now. And I mean, his best football's ahead of him.
I thought maybe you'd go Abdul Carter, but that's an interesting guy. I'm going to have to watch him a little closer. Tony, thanks as always. A lot of great stuff. I know all our listeners love to have you on. We get great ratings when you come on. You can find Tony at Sportskeeda. He's the draft analyst and consulting editor there. You can find him on Twitter at Tony Pauline. Tony, thanks again for a lot of great information. We look forward to having you again sometime.
Absolutely. Thanks. My pleasure to be here.
All right.
In case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Yeah.